In the history of gaming, I think Star Citizen will be an achievement of sorts, and I think this will be for the same reason why the game periodically makes headlines from news outlets which typically don't cover games: its funding. While people are no longer surprised by billion-dollar revenue reports from games which contain gambling mechanics in the form of loot boxes, such as Fortnite and Overwatch, when a games company obtains hundreds of millions of dollars by crowdfunding, people pay attention. As of October 2020, Star Citizen has raised more than $300 million through crowdfunding. It's important to note that Star Citizen is not exclusively crowdfunded. As a blog from Cloud Imperium Games in early 2020 noted, a number of investors purchased more than several $1 million worth of shares in CIG. However, the majority of funding has come from crowdfunding. To put $300 million into perspective, this is more than it took to produce the greatest action movie of the 2010s, which is of course Mad Max Fury Road. So why is this notable? For me, it's because I cannot think of another example of a game, or film for that matter, which has been crowdfunded to the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. This reason alone was enough to get me interested in the project, and so every couple of years I check out the game for a week to see where it's at. This video is a visual diary of sorts of my time spent with the multiplayer component of the game, whose release version at the time of this video is 3.11. I'm only able to do this because the multiplayer is in open development, which in 2020 is unusual in game development. There are many fantastic online videos of people teaming up to do creative stuff in the game together, but I wanted to see what the game could offer to someone just starting out by themselves. As such, I played the game solo. So what was it like playing Star Citizen 3.11 after more than 2 years away from the game? For starters, I had forgotten how the game refuses to hold your hand, especially when it comes to flight. When I got into a ship for the first time, I had to look up how to launch and retract the ship's landing gears, which wasn't itself too bad, but when I pressed W to go forwards, the ship hardly moved at all. I had to ask other players using the in-game chat how to turn up the engine power, which is actually just done by scrolling with the mouse wheel. But by the time I'd figured this out, my ship had floated into a bad area, and I had broken some rule in the game. This meant that when I inevitably crashed the ship a couple of minutes later, I ended up in the game's prison. Worse, the game told me I was stuck there for 50 minutes, although I apparently had the ability to reduce the time by mining rocks. Mining didn't exist the last time I played Star Citizen, and so it was something I wanted to check out. This meant the game forcing me to learn how to mine early on wasn't too bad, since I was going to learn it anyway. The game expects you know how to do this though, so I had to find a playthrough on YouTube to figure this out. This process was very indicative of things to come. For every new thing in the game I encountered, I would end up watching a YouTube video to see how it was done. But by the time I had figured out what to do and had mined some gems, the game didn't actually allow me to use them to reduce the prison time. I thought at first I was doing something wrong, but then I realized it was a bug. The existence of a feature-breaking bug was also indicative of things to come. Another new feature of the game were caves. Having done a bit of caving in real life, I was keen to check these out. To provide some context about my caving experience, the largest amount of caving I did was back in 2012, when I went on a caving trip to a remote part of Australia called the Nullarbor Plain. The trip was massive and lasted more than 10 days. I didn't know it at the time, but it would turn out to be one of the best holidays of my life. The caves in Star Citizen do not come close to the brilliant memories I have from that trip, obviously, but I can't think of a piece of entertainment which does a better job of recreating the feeling of exploring a cave than Star Citizen. In the game, cave exploration was not something I wanted to do repeatedly. About 3 hours was enough for me, but that entire time I was surprised by how varied and realistic the gameplay felt. I didn't even know the game had a crawl button until I came across what felt like a dead end, only to realize it may be possible to crawl through a very low gap. I had never crawled through a cave in the game before. In the Nullarbor trip, I had crawled through plenty of caves, but in real life the spaces were even more tight and I came out with dirt all over my overalls. But still, I haven't seen any other game recreate that moment in spirit. In the Australian caving trip, many of the caves we visited were so long that after spending more than an hour underground, my working memory would fail to completely remember the path to the surface. Around this point, a primal part of my brain would take over, and suddenly the fear of becoming lost in the dark and subsequently dying would become very real. This fear never became super intense since I was with 10 or so other people and we had a map, but still, the fear was in the back of our minds. Brilliantly, the caves in Star Citizen do not have maps, and I hope they don't add them. This meant that after exploring the cave for more than an hour, my working memory began to fail as well. The feeling of not knowing how to get out of a cave is a very unique feeling, and one that I haven't experienced in a game before. While I thought these aspects were interesting, the ostensible purpose of the caves is much less so. In the game, caves are simply a place in which to find bodies of lost souls in missing person missions, and to mine materials which can be traded for virtual currency in the game. I had assumed that dying in a cave meant losing the jewels I had gathered, but this turned out not to be the case. I realized that if the rucksack storing the jewels was not equipped when I died, the jewels in the rucksack would both magically remain with me when I respawned. This meant I would only get out the rucksack to pick up jewels, and then immediately put it back once I had filled it, safe in the knowledge that if I randomly died or got kicked out of the game because of a server error, there would be no penalty. This turned out to be a good thing, since the caves have loads of bugs, and not of the living kind. Because of a bug with the game's physics engine, I would often randomly clip into rocks, and subsequently get stuck inside them. You're not able to walk through a rock in real life, so you should not be able to walk through a rock in the game. Getting trapped in this way was something that happened every time I went into a cave, which was very disappointing, and sullied the experience. While getting trapped and dying because of a bug in the physics engine was not what the caving experience was meant to be, overall I still had a positive time with the caves, not least because no other game captures the experience quite as well. But what is the point of mining? For many players, it's to build up credits to buy more interesting things in the game, such as ships. Different ships have different functions, and several can mine rocks on the surface. I wanted to see how one of these ships, the Prospector, worked. Most players don't begin the game with access to all the ships, but this isn't a hard restriction since many of the ships can be hired out. Hiring the Prospector for a day cost 40,000, which I obtained after selling the jewels I had mined from the caves. This cost would have been alright if the ship quickly paid for itself after an hour of gameplay, but this was not to be the case. What I discovered is that the Prospector, or at least the hired version, is part of a lengthy and grindy gameplay loop. After mining with the Prospector for an hour, I had only earned $10,000. I found this disappointing since the same amount of money can be obtained in the same time by mining by hand. I have seen videos online of people mining upwards of $100,000 per hour with the Prospector, but this requires upgrades. Getting an upgrade only makes sense if you own your own Prospector though, which is quite expensive, and even once you have it, at $100,000 the upgrade is still very expensive. Another aspect which made the rented Prospector a terrible ship was the restriction of what could be mined. One of the most valuable minerals in the game is bexolite. This is quite rare, and during my time with the Prospector I only discovered a single bexolite rock cluster. But when I tried to mine it, the game told me the Prospector I had spent $40,000 to rent was not capable of mining it. I can only conclude that the mining loop consists of spending hours with a crappy Prospector in order to save up for your own crappy Prospector, and then mining with that to save up for a mining upgrade, and only after buying that be able to bring in the big bucks. That's not my idea of fun, and certainly not an interesting use of my spare time. I can see mining being an activity to pass the time while catching up with friends. Since it's not very brain intensive, it would be easy to mine and simultaneously talk about our lives in the world, but as a solo experience, it's not interesting enough. This said, I think can be made more interesting with a tiny bit of extra work. The main thing that's off with it is the numbers, and changing numbers in a spreadsheet is simple, at least in theory. I guess we'll see how those numbers change in the years to come. I've mentioned my disappointment with the cave bugs and the mining mechanics, but there is one aspect of the game which absolutely does not disappoint, and that is its planets. As you've seen so far, the world of Star Citizen is very beautiful, and its planets are simply stunning. I would go so far as to say no other game has planets as beautiful as those in Star Citizen. I find it equal parts sad and amusing when people online decry the game as a giant scam, especially during moments like you see here. This gorgeous sunrise was not even a set piece of the game, but rather something I came across after logging into my ship. And I know that such a moment was not unique to me. The game is able to surprise players with its beauty in instances at moments like this. The fact that the game does not even try and steer players towards these visuals goes to show how the people making this game are confident they are creating something beautiful, and that players will discover the beauty by themselves. The other standout feature of the game, in my opinion, is the quality of the ships and vehicles. The game has a ludicrous number of ships, and their differences are far from cosmetic. I wasn't able to test out all of them, since buying the game doesn't immediately give you access to everything, but all the ones I did test out had very different designs, purposes, and flight behaviors. Of the ships I tested, the one I thought was the most interesting was the Glaive. I think it looks great, and is quite fun to fly. My favourite feature of it is not visible from the outside though, but here's a hint. How do you get in it? For something so sleek, ladders would be clunky and ugly, so the ship has an alternative way in mind. The game surprised me with the ship when the wings touched the ground during a moment of carelessness. I thought the ship would have blown up, but instead pieces of it fell off, including one of the engines. Brilliantly, This meant that the forward's thrust was no longer symmetric, so when I pressed the forwards button, the ship actually moved in an arc to the right. In order to fly straight, then, I had to steer it to the left as I went forwards. I had initially thought that steering it in this way was going to be impossible, and I almost quit and reset, but I persevered and eventually figured it out. I had never experienced having to fly a ship differently like this in any game before, which made me very impressed with the flight mechanics. The game has a large number of ground vehicles too. Many of these are expensive, but at $5,000 I was able to afford a buggy after playing the game for a few hours. I tried my hardest to drive it into my main ship, but it would always get stuck. I tried to land the ship on surfaces with different slopes, hoping this could make a difference, but it failed every time. I'm pretty sure that the distance between the buggy's wheels and its base is so low that the base collides with the corner at the top of the ramp, making it impossible to drive up. This was disappointing, and I hope it gets fixed in later releases. In terms of other things to do in the game, there are a few FPS missions, but I didn't attempt any of these since, as you have seen, the game's frame rate in busy areas was too low on my system. I can't possibly play an FPS mission in 30 frames per second. Such a thing happened in the dark days, when I had a console and no gaming PC. After you get used to playing shooters at 144 frames per second, there is no going back. I did try out a few of the cargo transportation missions, which while boring, were helpful during the first hours of the game, since they allowed me to get used to the ship controls and fully absorb the beauty of the planets. And so concludes my main thoughts regarding gameplay for my biennial check-in with Star Citizen. Almost all the aspects I've talked about so far were about the multiplayer, but it's actually the prospect of the single-player campaign which excites me the most. This should be arriving within the next couple of years. I feel that nothing in games has quite filled the void left by the Mass Effect space opera trilogy in the early 2010s, and I'm very much hoping that the single player will satiate this desire. The world in the multiplayer is already large, very beautiful, and with a huge number of distinct flyable ships and vehicles. Presumably all of this stuff will be used in the single player, which makes me incredibly hyped for it. I have no doubt that the game will be as beautiful and have varied gameplay. I'm just hoping that CIG can nail the narrative. I think the main reason why the Mass Effect series has so much love is the writing, in particular, the game's characters and how they influence the story. If CIG can nail this aspect, I think we'll have something very special indeed. If I have to make a concrete prediction, I'm going to bet that the single player will be received quite well. I think there will be significant sales from people who are currently not thinking about playing the game. Assuming CIG can get the narrative right, which is a critical component, I think it will be praised and loved as much as the 2018 God of War reboot. Okay, that's it for me, end of diary entry. I'm looking forward to coming back and watching this video in a couple of years' time after the release of the single player and comparing my thoughts. 2020 has been a disaster of a year. Hopefully the year in which the single player is released is better than the one in which this video was made.